Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Slimming Surgeon podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kandace Kichler, and today I have my honorary co-host, Daria, with us, as we are going to talk about women things. So I want to go over my birth story.
So excited for this one.
My birth stories, plural, because I know when I was pregnant, especially with Charlie and even with Camden, I really just wanted to know about other women's experiences and like how it was for them. Like I just wanted to know details because I felt like the more I knew, the more I could kind of prepare, even though you really can't prepare for birth. But before we go there, Daria just got married.
Woo. Sorry, guys, I'm off the market.
She's off the market. She's too tall to handle and now too married to handle. But tell us like how it went, because it was not like a regular like Sunday church wedding.
Absolutely not. So that was like my biggest fucking nightmare, to be honest. So instead I just opted to do the courthouse. So on a Wednesday, it was last Wednesday, Dan and I just went to the courthouse and we got married.
I love it. But you had a beautiful dress. Yes. He was dressed up as well in like a tux. Like
it was so perfect and so stress-free. It was like the best way I could have ever imagined getting married. And, you know, it was really funny. My whole wedding cost me like $400.
Amazing.
Yes.
Mine was cheap because I got married in Alabama, but like not.
Did you have like fried chicken?
We had a buffet.
Oh, nice.
And it was good. I don't think it was fried chicken. It could have been. I don't really remember. I have a horrible memory, but we definitely had baked beans because that was like my favorite food growing up and like a soul food. But
sounds like a wedding I would love to go to.
No, it was really fun. But so you guys went to the courthouse. Did you go anywhere before or after?
No. So the night before I stayed at my mom's house. She lives here in Palm Beach. So I was able to like wake up with her and get ready together, which was super cute. And then he came to the house, picked me up. We went to the courthouse. The courthouse ceremony was maybe 7.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we went home and our photographer came to our house and met us.
Yes.
So we did a really cool photo shoot. I got to wear my great dress. And as you know, this week has been horrific with like rain and wind. So the pictures were tough, but they came out a lot better than I expected.
They look beautiful.
So they were awesome.
You would not even know that it was raining in the photos.
Like he crushed it. Oh my gosh. It was amazing. And then that night we went to La Parisienne in Jupiter. It's our favorite restaurant. And it was just us two. And we were in bed by 9 and it was our perfect day.
I love that. I love that. And now you have a new Instagram handle.
I know. Not Daria Goggles, but Daria Toggles.
Yes. So everybody go to Daria Toggles Instagram page and look at her wedding photos because they're absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. That's really sweet. I'm not ready to change it to Daria Tighe yet. So once I do that legally, that's when the toggles will turn to Tighe, I think.
Well, you're Daria Tighe in my phone since I met you.
Oh, no way. Oh,
literally.
So
like before you were even engaged. Yeah.
You knew.
I knew. Well, and I helped you manifest this.
Thank you. Oh my God. I'm living my best life because of you. Oh my God. That's so sweet. I didn't know that.
Yeah. You can check my phone.
True friend. Well, I'm glad that you actually brought up my wedding too, because now that I'm married soon, I want to start having children.
Yes.
And you brought up the topic, you know, this podcast, you wanted to talk about your birthing experience. You've had 2 children.
Yes.
I'm sure each experience was very different.
Very different.
I don't know if you like that segue or not, but let's get it going.
No, it's perfect. Yeah. So let's start with Charlie. So I was 32 at the time, my first baby. And, you know, I'm like kind of crunchy where like I wanted to be very natural.
Well, your first baby too. I'm sure every mom is like very natural and like wanting to, you know, do everything quote unquote right.
Yeah. Like I didn't want an epidural. I didn't want like any unnecessary like medications. Like, you know, I wanted to just have birth or give birth.
Did you give birth in like a bathtub somewhere at home or?
No. Okay. No, not at all. I wasn't that crunchy.
Gotcha.
Because I've seen really horrific things like going through medical training that it wasn't in my playbook to consider doing it outside of a hospital.
Gotcha.
And with like medical care, like right away available. But I did want to do it like as natural as possible. Like, you know, labor at home for a period of time, then go to the hospital, like all those like things. But life hands you different cards and I have a blood clotting disorder. So I had to be on blood thinning shots called Lovenox, like all of my pregnancy. So at first it was just once a day, but then closer to delivery, I had to change the formulation, go from Lovenox to heparin. It's just like a different type of the same type of medication. And that was twice a day. in preparation for the birth because the twice a day medication wears off faster. So in case I go into labor, they'd be able to reverse it and I could potentially get an epidural, like all these things. There's a lot of logistics that go into it. Wow. But on top of that, with the blood clotting disorder, once I hit a certain point, my doctor was like, you need to be induced because your blood clotting disorder puts you at risk for having issues with your placenta, which is like what gives the baby their blood supply and their nourishment and like all the important things like to keep your baby alive.
Okay. So when they say they're going to induce you, is it just like they press a button and induce you, or is it a shot, or like how are you induced?
I know.
I've actually never asked that question before.
And nobody really knows. They don't really even tell you what exactly is going to happen. It's just like, okay, you're going to go have a baby. So it's like literally you get an appointment to go to the hospital. At least this is how it worked for me. And it was like, okay, and this was at 39 weeks. So I'm 39 weeks pregnant, like I'd gone, just side note, I had like maybe one episode where I went to the ER, like the labor ER, because I thought I was having labor, but I actually wasn't. I was just dehydrated. And so this is like induction. You're going in and you're not in labor at all. So you just go in for scheduled day and scheduled time, and they kind of just like start doing things to you to make labor happen.
No way. You don't know what that is?
Like they'll mention things, but then like they just happen. So
curious. And
as a medical provider, it's a little scary because you're like, okay, well, what are you doing? Like, I want to research this first, and you can't. I mean, maybe you can if you really press, but I was just like going with the flow.
Okay.
And I was like, okay. So I went into the hospital. He was born on the 21st or the 20th October. And it was like 3 p.m. Something like that.
And that was your appointment, was for 3 p.m.?
That was my appointment. Show up at 3:45 p.m. on the 20th.
Wait, so let me ask you a question first. So why have an appointment like that versus going through labor naturally? Was there a specific reason for that?
Because they wanted to get the baby out.
Because of your clotting disorder?
Because of my clotting disorder.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
And some, like there are other indications to do that. Like if you've got some type of high risk pregnancy and they want the baby to come out, or if you're overdue, like there's different reasons why they may want the baby to come, not naturally.
So you didn't go through like the breaking, water breaking at the grocery store or anything, you know what I mean?
None of that.
Good.
Kind of glad, but
that's scary.
Yeah. And gross, but whatever.
Peeing on the floor in the grocery store.
A lot of things about birth are gross. So I show up, it's like 3:45. I think it was a Saturday afternoon. And the reason why it was scheduled like that is because my doctor was on call the next day. So they knew, I guess, like the majority of people who get induced don't have it within the first like 12 hours. It's usually the next day. So my doctor knew he would be there the next day and the next night. So that when I actually had the baby, he would be there to catch it.
While it flies out.
Yeah. So I go in, I get admitted, they give you an IV, they hook you up to the monitor and watch the baby's heart rate and your contractions. And they put a medication in my cervix. So like at the base of my cervix. So like you put your hands inside you, that's like your vagina. And then beyond that is like the opening of your uterus, which is like your cervix. So they put this medication, it was like a strip of paper. It was the weirdest shit ever because like they could barely get it in, like the way like the nurse was trying to shove it up there. This is graphic, but this is real life. And
let's hear it.
So like I had like one nurse doing it, then I had one nurse trainee doing it. And I'm like, all these hands going up my body when I'm like 39 weeks pregnant. And it's like, okay, whatever. Like, cause I'm a doctor. So I'm like, I don't care. Like, I understand, just get the shit in there. And so they put this thing called Cervidil in. And the point of that medication is to try to quote unquote ripen your cervix so that it will kind of relax and dilate so that the baby can start coming out.
I've never heard of this before. Wow. Okay.
I know. There's other things they do.
Medicine?
One of them. There's many. There's many. And I won't speak to the other ones because I didn't have them and I don't know. But like there's other things that they can do. This is just your experience.
Yeah.
And this is not medical advice. That'll be in the podcast notes. So they put the Cervidil in and normal people, it works and it like dilates your cervix.
But not you, huh?
Not me. So I go in, not at all dilated. Like there are different stages of where the baby is, like in the birth canal, like 1, 2, and 3. And I was like stage 1, like the baby was still like relatively high up there. The Cervidil didn't really work, except it made me start having contractions. So
like you would feel like a labor pain.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
And that happened from basically the moment they put it in all night long. And I'm like, awesome. Like I kept thinking, okay, this is so good. Like my body's doing what it's supposed to. I'm going into labor. Well, after the 8 to 12 hours, like by the next morning, I was still dilated like 1 centimeter.
Oh my gosh.
Like basically nothing. And I was like up all night, bouncing on a ball, trying to push the baby down.
No sleep. Oh,
no
that sounds
sleep.
like torture.
It is torture. It's actually quite torture. So I was a little discouraged. And after that night, they were like, okay, well, now it's time. We're going to take the Cervidil out and we're going to start you on pitocin, which is the
I've heard of pitocin.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the medication that is the pharmaceutical, basically like the manufactured form of oxytocin, which is the like hormone that makes you have a baby. Like go into labor, the baby come out, all the things that like naturally happen with labor. So they start the pitocin, they start at like 2, then they crank it up to 4, then 6, 8, whatever. You know, they get to a certain point where it's like debilitating pain where I'm like, okay, this is not pleasant. Like, I mean, none of it was pleasant, but this was like even worse pleasant where I was crying.
Was it unusual or is that something that you shouldn't have felt that way?
No,
or?
I think that's what happens.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And I think that that's something they never tell you about like induction and
There's so many things that no one ever tells us.
pitocin, right. And so before this, I'll do a little side note. Before I got induced, I was like scouring the internet with like ways to have a natural induction where you don't need an epidural and like you can just do it naturally. And I found like one person that was able to do it.
Locally?
No, like in the world.
No way.
I mean, this is my internet search, so who knows how good it was. But so I was like, that's a little weird. Well, after I was going through it, I was like, this is why I couldn't find any information on this because I was begging for an epidural. I was begging for an epidural. I was begging for a C-section. I was like, get me out of this pain because it was like 20 out of 10.
Is there ever a point where it's too late for an epidural?
Yeah, but you have to be like really dilated.
Okay.
And
so you weren't there, which is good.
No.
Okay.
So I'm on pitocin and they keep checking me and I'm still like 1 centimeter. I think I got to like 2 centimeters.
Oh, you just like weren't opening up.
I wasn't opening up, like literally.
Wow.
And so I feel like this is like slowly leaning down. So I'm like in this faux labor situation and I call my doctor in, or he came in, to check on me or whatever. And I was like, this is like not bearable. Like they did give me after the full night of contractions, they gave me one medication called Stadol, which is like similar to morphine. But you can only get it.
Please tell me that helped you.
It did. It helped me for like 2 hours. I was able to get a nap.
Nice.
But I couldn't get it again. So like I took it once and it makes you like really, really, really relax. It makes you like basically like pass out,
Nice.
like, cause it's really
Glorious.
heavy. Yeah. Which I'm like, okay, if it's making me pass out, what's it doing to the baby? But whatever, here we are. He's alive.
Charlie's great.
Yeah, he's fine. And then, so after a couple hours, like once that wore off and I was still on pitocin, I was like, can I have like one more dose? But I had read, and it was true, that after the first dose, you just don't respond the same. Like it doesn't work the same. So it didn't relieve my pain, but it made my respirations, like my breathing, so diminished where I felt like I couldn't catch my breath.
So it sounds like you had a kind of a traumatic first time birthing experience.
It was absolutely horrible. And so I don't want to, we're definitely scaring the listeners.
No, it's okay. I think it's good to be honest instead of just breezing over it, saying, oh, it was wonderful. It was great. It was so easy.
Yeah. And
we want to hear the real shit.
I don't want to say that it was like the worst thing in the world, but when we get to Camden, you'll know why we did what we did with Camden.
Okay.
So I take Stadol again. I feel like I can't breathe. I'm literally begging my nurse for Narcan, which is like the medication to reverse the medication because I couldn't breathe. And I thought I was going to like suffocate myself.
That's what they give people who like overdose on heroin.
I felt like I was being overdosed. Like, and imagine you're like in labor and you think you're overdosing. So you're like,
scary.
It was horrible.
Jeez.
And so,
you're a warrior, girl.
So beyond that, I'm like, okay, I call my doctor and I'm like, I really can I please have an epidural? Because then I can like tolerate this situation and we can keep going. He's like, well, if I give you an epidural, your labor might be 36 hours. And we were already over 12 hours in at this point. And I'm like,
and that's a long time, correct?
I'm
the
like
average
crying.
is probably 12.
I don't even know if there's an average. I don't know. That's a good question.
So were you trying to be like a Billy Badass and not getting an epidural up until this point?
But also they didn't really, because I wasn't very dilated. They
didn't want to give it to you yet. Okay.
Right. They didn't want to give it to me because they didn't know how long the induction would be.
Okay.
If it would stall the labor, because sometimes it can make your labor like delayed. So I was like, I don't care. Like, it took a couple hours for us to come to an agreement, but I was like, I don't care. I'd rather have it and see what happens than to keep being in this amount of pain. And I'm not like everyone
I'm sure
says
you're very
this.
pain tolerant too.
Yeah, everyone says that, and it's like, okay, yeah, sure you are, but no, really,
you're pain tolerant.
I literally am like I'm a surgeon, and I know what pain is, and so I was like, okay, just do it, or just cut me open. Like I was literally, just do a C-section. I don't care. Get the baby out of me. Like I can't keep going. So this is like hour 16, and so then they put the epidural in. And I'm convulsing, like shaking in pain. That's how bad the contractions are at this point. That I had to like hold my breath a certain way to be still enough for them to stick the needle in my back to do the epidural. Cause I was like, okay, this is cool. They're just going to hit my spinal cord. Like I got to be still, paralyzed. But I was in such pain that I was literally shaking.
Oh my gosh. Was your husband in the room with you?
Yeah. Nick was so supportive, and he was like trying to rub my back. He was like doing all the things that we learned in Lamaze class to like help someone through labor. But when I tell you the pain of induction and pitocin is beyond what you can do yourself, like I'm being honest and like so true. So just plan to get an epidural.
Okay.
So if you get induced. So then I get the epidural, and it was like the skies opened, the clouds, whatever it's called, where things are really good. It like I was able to relax. Okay. And from there, my labor was only 8 more hours. So then my body relaxed. I started dilating. The baby moved down, and all of a sudden water gushed everywhere. So my water broke spontaneously. And this is probably 22 hours in. And so then, they watch me for a little bit, and they're like, okay, it's time to push. And I'm like, okay, awesome. So I start pushing. I push for 1 full hour. And he's, in there, the doctor's in there, like his heart rate is kind of dropping every now and then. So he's like, we need to get this baby out. So he gets the vacuum.
There's a baby vacuum?
There's a baby vacuum where it literally, because at this point you're dilated enough to where you can see the head of the baby. The membranes have ruptured, so the water's broken. So like you're seeing like literal baby head. Okay. So they take this vacuum and stick it on the baby's head. And you, in coordination with you making a push, which is like trying to basically like pushing down, like you're trying to poop. Like you do this push, and then they suction the baby out at the same time.
You are like blowing my mind right now. I've never heard of like a baby Dyson vacuum before. Wait, is that why babies' heads sometimes come out looking really like cone?
There's a couple reasons for that, but the vacuum can do it. It can also be if the baby's in the birth canal for too long. There's a lot of reasons.
I'm sure the baby's head's very malleable and stuff.
It's very malleable because the bones aren't fused yet. Otherwise they wouldn't come out the birth canal.
Okay. So baby vacuum.
So he baby vacuums Charlie out of me, and then rips off the cord because it was wrapped around his neck, which was why his heart rate kept dropping when I was pushing.
That's scary too.
Terrifying.
Wow.
And then come to find out I was ripped, like I was tore. Despite this 24 hours of labor, you would think the skin and stuff would have stretched by that point. Well, it didn't. And so I was torn. There's like 4 degrees of tear. I was torn to the 3rd degree.
No. Is the 4th degree like to
the 4th degree is like all the way. Yeah. To your butt. And so the baby comes out, they put him on the machine, they warm him up, clean him off, whatever, do all the things. And then I have to sit there and get sewed up. Which luckily
you feel it?
You can't feel anything because I had the epidural, which was awesome, and mine worked really well. I have heard horror stories of where people's like don't quite work that well, and you're like only numb on one side. Mine was actually really great. So shout out to that CRNA who gave me the epidural.
Wait, so epidurals? Sorry, I've never had a baby, so I don't know this. So this is a question I've actually always had. So with an epidural, do you just literally feel nothing? Are you completely numb? Do you feel pressure? Do you feel just
it's
number pain?
It's a weird sensation, and it's kind of like. It's similar to what I got with my C-section with Camden, but it's like you can't move. So like you can't move your legs, but you can kind of feel some stuff, but not pain. It's just weird. There's probably a way to describe it medically, but I just don't know.
I mean,
it's just like you're numb, but you're not numb. Like I can tell things are happening. Like I had the ability to push. So I had like a really good one because that's exactly what you want. You want to not have pain, but you want to be able to kind of like control some things. So like I could tell that I was pushing, but I was not, feeling the contractions like I was before.
Okay. Or you can't feel them like sewing your vagina to your butthole.
Exactly. Yeah, like I could feel that something was moving down there and that, he was working, but I couldn't feel pain.
And is there anything that you can do, I guess, to prevent a severe tear? Or like, is there just kind of nothing you can do?
I don't think there's really that much you can do. When you read online, you'll see stuff about like, oiling up your area and things like that. But to be honest, I think there's just like a lot of factors, like the birth, how traumatic it is, how big the baby it is, how fast it is. Like there's just like a lot of stuff. And like, I don't know that I did anything right or wrong to make it happen. It just did. And it is what it is. Okay. So that was scary because, as a surgeon who previously did general surgery, I would see people with like fistulas and like all these problems where like the connection, like what he sewed up doesn't totally heal.
What's a fistula?
It's where it doesn't heal. And like, even though he sewed me up and separated my vagina from my rectum, if it doesn't heal, you could be like pooping out of your vagina. No. Yeah. So, the fact that I had a tear and had to be sewed up was like super traumatizing.
I'm sure our producer is really traumatized right now.
I know. I'm sorry, McKay. And I think last time we got into something, I talked about labiaplasties last time. So he's like, he's quitting tomorrow. Know, he's quitting tomorrow. Sorry. Anyways, so back to my tear. It was repaired and and I know I keep moving around too. He's like having to adjust the screens. So that was repaired. That wasn't bad. And then, we went about our postpartum life. The baby was healthy. He was alive, there's a lot of stuff that happens that can happen that just, at the end of the day, I'm just glad that he came out when he did, even though it was literally 24 hours.
You were fighting for your life for an entire day.
It was a full day. And that's what, like, another thing I wanted to mention, like, going into the hospital, like to have a baby, like if you're in labor naturally, yes, amazing, do it. Like don't even pass go, collect $200. But like if you're being offered an induction and you're not quite sure why, or like maybe it's just like it seems a little haphazard, or like it's for a scheduling issue, like I would think twice about that. Okay. Like, oh, let's induce you because I'm going to be out of town the next week or whatever, or let's get induced on this day because my family will be in town. I don't recommend that.
Like, sure, no, I get that.
That doesn't, like, after what I've been through, like, I would not wish that on my worst nightmare.
Yeah, enemy. No, I get that. If you wanted to do a home birth with this birth with Charlie, would you have been unable to due to your complications?
I don't know.
Like, do you think that you would have survived it, or if he would have survived it if you did a home birth? Because
right, think about that.
I waffle with. Like, it would be kind of interesting and cool to do it the natural way.
Right.
But, hearing like what you went through, I feel like that might not always be smart. It would be a folly if, heaven forbid something goes wrong.
Let's just say I've seen some really, really sad, scary things happen with people who've attempted. I've also seen people have beautiful home births. So it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a risk, but I guess if you're willing to take it,
it's a risk. And like, if you feel that strongly about that being the way you need to have a baby, then by all means, it's your life, live it. But, it wasn't something that I would even consider at this point.
Okay.
After what I went through and after what I've seen in medical training, like go wrong with a home birth.
Yeah, it's just you're the doctor, so I'll listen to you.
I mean, I'm not an OBGYN. I don't want to pretend like I know better than anyone else.
Of course not.
But like, hello, like one lady, for example, didn't know that her tailbone was too long and the baby wasn't able to come out. What? And it didn't end well. We'll just keep it at that. Well, so like
new fear unlocked.
Yeah. And this is not something you're going to know. It's not something your midwife is going to know. Like, and it's just like, you don't want to risk that.
You know what? Enough said.
Anyways.
Okay, so that was, Charlie.
Versus if you're in the hospital, and something goes awry, you still have that chance of getting an emergency C-section, so there's that like little bit of cushion, even though that's not always perfect either. So that was Charlie. Side note, I did want to mention, so like having gone through a 24-hour labor, I kind of already was like, I'm not doing this shit NPO, because NPO, nothing by mouth, is what they recommend. Like, come to the hospital, don't eat, like.
Wait, NPO?
Yeah, that's the abbreviation in medical terms that we use for not eating after a certain period of time. So that your stomach is empty, so that you don't vomit, like for potential issues that could happen with having a full stomach and having a baby or having anesthesia. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to work out for me, because I know that this is not going to be 2 hours. So I'm going to have time to clear whatever I take. And I know that the stomach empties liquids in 4 hours. And I read some other things.
But leave it at that. But I hear you. Okay.
Basically, I came to the hospital with protein shakes.
Brilliant.
And honey sticks.
Like, there's nothing like being hangry, especially when you're trying to bring life into this world.
Exactly. So I was like, I knew that I wasn't going to have the protein shake. Obviously, I wasn't going to be guzzling that while I'm pushing. But like early in, when I first get checked in, like, you know, for dinner or something that night, I was like, I'm going to have some protein. This is crazy.
So they tell you not to eat?
Yeah. And then you just starve.
You're just starved.
Well, the reason that I'm sure some anesthesiologist who listens to this is going to echo is that so you don't vomit and aspirate, whatever. Yeah. Yeah. That's not going to happen. That's how I felt. I felt like it wasn't going to happen, and that was my risk. So I snuck in protein shake.
Was worth the risk.
It was worth the risk. So I had protein shake the first night while I was like, you know, bouncing on a ball. And then when I was in full blown labor, pushing and having like all those contractions, like when the nurse would step out, I would like put a honey stick in my mouth and get a little bit of sugar.
I'm sure you were burning major calories.
It gave me a lot of energy. It gave me energy. And to me, I'm like, okay, I'm taking a honey stick. It's dissolving in my mouth. Therefore, it's not like I'm taking a chunk of some type of, you know, gelatinous material. Yeah. Right. So I'm like, I'm not going to aspirate this. Like, it's totally fine. And it really helped.
I did not know they didn't let you eat.
This is not medical advice, but I highly recommend.
No, this is Kandace's advice. This is Kandace's podcast. Do what you want to do.
Yeah. So those were two things that I really was glad that I did.
Okay. And are there things that you wish you had done that you didn't know at the time? Like, would you, for me,
no,
as a
because
potential new mom?
There wasn't a way for me to not have an induction because I was 39 weeks and I had the blood clotting disorder. My thing would just be like, if you don't have a medical reason to be induced, just wait it out. Like, I'm not saying wait till you're 42 weeks pregnant, but like 40 weeks, sure. 41 weeks, maybe. Like, people used to have babies late all the time. And it was okay. It's like, we're in this day and age where like urgency is like, it's all like a timing and a scheduling and a, let's get this done by this point. And let's induce you so that I'm there, you know, like maybe sometimes nature is a little bit better. I mean, I say that and I say home births I don't agree with, but you know, whatever. I'm in the middle. Within reason. So, listen to your body, listen to your intuition, but also make informed decisions.
Okay. Was there something that you wish you brought to the hospital with you that you didn't have your first time around? Or did you have like the little bag packed?
Remember.
Okay, good.
Not that I can remember. Okay. They give you a lot of stuff in the hospital. That's nice. The other like wonderful thing is like most of the time the nurses and the staff in the postpartum or even in the labor and delivery area are like so amazing. So nurturing. My nurse for Charlie's labor, the one that was with me like the day of actually delivering, she was like a saint. She was an angel sent from God. I'm not even kidding you. She had 8 kids herself. So she knew exactly what I was going through and she knew exactly how to talk to me and calm me down and like guide me along what was happening and like how to do this. And like, it was just like, she was so amazing.
I'm sure that changes the experience for you. Which hospital did you get birth at?
Totally. Wellington Regional. And I had both babies there. I highly recommend, but she was really great. And that does make a big difference in your experience because if you have someone who doesn't give a shit about you and who's just like annoyed that you're there in labor and screaming in pain, which I don't really scream in pain, but some people do. You know, you want someone who's caring. And most of the time the nurses on those floors are because it's like, you know, that's where they want to be.
You know, in the movies where you see like the mother giving birth and they're screaming like, you motherfucker, I hate you. Like, does that happen? Did that happen?
It didn't happen to me, but not that I can recall, especially because I had the epidural. So like, pushing was not easy, but like, I wasn't screaming, but I heard people screaming.
No.
Yes. You hear women down the hall screaming and you're like, oh my God, I don't want this to happen.
Cringe. Yeah. I do not want that to be me.
It was, a little bit terrifying when you check in and you're like this happy, ready to deliver lady. And then you hear like literally screaming bloody murder down the hall. You did this to me, motherfucker. I hate you. I love that. Yeah. So, that was Charlie.
Okay. Charlie. So 10 out of 10, great experience.
Yeah.
10 out of 10 would do again horrible. And you did again.
And to be honest, the reason why I waited so long to have a second baby was because of that birth. Like it was so horrible to me. It was
traumatic.
That I was like, why would I put myself through that again? That was terrifying. Like, what if he didn't get pulled out with the vacuum and the cord was around his neck? You know, like I went through this huge tear situation, which it actually healed fine and really quickly. Like the body is a miracle, miraculous, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a lot. So I was not ready to do that anytime soon. And also he had sleeping issues. So then it was like,
that could be a whole other episode. Honestly, I would love to hear about the afterbirth and
I think
baby care.
Yeah, I could do a podcast on like how to have children who don't sleep through the night. No, mine are like the worst sleepers. But anyways, Charlie's great now, but Cam is still bad. Okay, so let's talk about Cam.
Okay, cool. So you forgot about the traumatic experience.
I heard
that the body kind of like protects you, that it forgets about the pain. Is that true?
Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, like I remember it, but I don't remember it.
You know, like okay,
it's not where I'm like terrified to never do that again. It was more so the whole experience that I was terrified of, not the actual physical labor. But with that being said, Camden, I was 30, I'm 36 now. I don't know how old I am. I'm not that old, but I was older, 4 years older. So yeah, I was 36 when I was pregnant with Camden.
Amazing.
And he was measuring a little bit bigger than Charlie, but, craziness, he was breech for a certain period of time.
And what does that mean for the people that don't know, like myself?
Yeah. So when you're getting ready to have the baby, like in the last like trimester, the baby will flip to be head down. So like when you first get pregnant, they're just like floating around in there. They might be head up, head down, sideways, twisting around, doing flips. But then when the baby gets bigger and it's almost time to go into labor, they will go into this position, assume the position.
No, they like assume a position.
They assume a position of head
incredible.
down. Yeah, okay. No, like it's like they know to do it.
So
some of them don't.
Feet first. Is that?
Yep, exactly. Okay. So feet first or butt first with the feet in front of them, or like one leg down, one leg up. Like he was, I think, butt down with his legs in front of his face, and his head was like up under my ribs. And this was like 30 weeks in, up to like 36 weeks.
Wow, and they stay in that position? Like it's not like they move around in the womb to maybe assume the position
Well, he had
later?
gotten big, to where it was like hard for him to flip back around. There are maneuvers that they can do to try to flip them. Like they say if you go in a pool and do a handstand, it might flip him. There's like a whole website called
Extreme.
There's a whole website called Spinning Babies where they try to help you do certain stretches and exercises to flip your baby to head down for people who want to go into labor naturally. But I was like, this is my chance. This is my opportunity. I'm going to get a C-section.
Were you wanting one?
Hell yeah. Okay, after what I went through with Charlie, I was like, and I'm a surgeon. So I'm like, let's just cut this baby out of me.
Okay. I'm sure you see the C-section scars like all day. So was that something you just like weren't really afraid of?
Not afraid of the scar at all. And also I'm like, okay, let's think about this. I do tummy tucks day in and day out, really good at it. Rarely does anything go wrong, like pretty much never. So I'm like, this is what they do. They do labors and they do C-sections day in and day out every day. This is what they do. Right. I'm sure not a lot goes wrong. And you look at the risk of like what could happen, and it's really low these days because like people are getting C-sections, So I was like, you know what? If he is breech, which is like a contraindication to go into natural labor these days, because not a lot of providers know how to deliver a breech baby because it's like complicated. Like it could mess up their limbs and like have issues with, I don't know, lots of issues. So, most providers will not even offer you a regular delivery if your baby is still breech when it's time to have them. So he was breech up until like almost the very end, and then he actually did flip.
Oh, but of course he did. He robbed you of the little shit.
No, but listen, I already had the C-section scheduled.
Oh, nice.
Because we scheduled it at like 35 or 36 weeks. Because I knew, with my blood clotting disorder, we'd have to go around 39. So like we already had it on the books, and I saw my doctor, and I was like, look, I really just want to do a C-section. Like I know you think I'm crazy, and he's like, yes, you're crazy. These are the risks with a C-section.
You're crazy?
Well, because everybody thinks that you should have a natural labor and the baby should come through a birth canal.
Been there, done that. So it's interesting that you actually have had both experiences. Yeah. I think that kind of sounds ideal. You ripped your vagina once. Like, do you have to do it again?
Amen.
Amen.
So I was like, I really just want to have the C-section. Let's just keep it. Like, let's keep it on the books. Like, he might flip again. He might be breached tomorrow. So like, why are we going to play this game? Just keep it on the books. And he's like, okay, fine, let's do it. And I also wanted to have my tubes tied because I was like, I'm not having any more kids after 2.
Okay.
And so when you have a C-section, they can tie your tubes at the same time.
So while they're at it, they just go, and they tie it up?
Literally.
Okay, cool.
So I was like, C-section, please. Tie my tubes, please. And let's just get it done. So that's what I did.
No way. So you have your tubes tied, so you don't have to worry about anything.
Right. It's amazing.
Spectacular. No birth control, no nothing.
No birth control. Yeah. And that's the other thing. I can't take normal birth control.
Because of your clotting disorder.
Because of my clotting disorder.
Sense.
So I've had IUDs throughout the years, which make you bleed heavier or they make your period stop altogether. I was able to get the like very, very low dose hormone one. And I did fine on that for, I think had that one for like 3 years. But I really didn't want to put hormones back in my body again. Even if it was the smallest amount from an IUD, I was like, I just would rather have my tubes tied. Like, I'm going to say this like a million times, but I'm a surgeon. So I'm like, just do it. Like, let's just physically, mechanically do it. So that way I don't have to think about it or take pills or have an IUD stuck in my uterus, like all the things.
I'm sorry. I have one more question about the tubes tying thing. I've heard that it's not always easy to get your tubes tied because they always want to like ensure like, are you sure? And that you have to get like jump through hoops and, ask your husband for permission. Is that how it goes?
No.
Or is it just kind of like your choice and they let you do it and there's no problem?
I mean, I did have to sign consent.
Sure.
And they do have that conversation with you, but I did not have to ask my husband. I did not have to like go through extensive like counseling or anything to get that approved. Like, no, it was just like, okay, we're doing a cesarean and also a salpingectomy. So the tubes are called, it's like the salpingo. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend I'm OB-GYN. But the salpingectomy is where they take the tubes out. So instead of them being just like cut and tied and burned or whatever they would normally do with a tube tying experience, my tubes, so like the tubes that connect the egg to the uterus, were completely removed. So like this long little, 1 or 2 inch structure was just like completely removed from me. So that way, there's not even a chance it could grow back together and I could get accidentally pregnant.
Okay.
But my doctor advocated for this. He says, this is what we do now because if you remove your tubes instead of just tying them, you are reducing your ovarian cancer risk.
So they remove the ovaries as well?
Nope. The ovaries stay, the uterus stays. So I have everything in position except the tube. So like the little connection point.
Wait, then so imagine ovaries like just floating in there, like what connects them?
Well, they have like little surrounding structures, like little ligaments and things that keep them in their position.
Okay, I thought that the tubes held on.
They do in the pictures. But they don't hold them up. Like
fascinating.
Inside the belly, things kind of just like float around and like kind of stick in their own position. But with the ovaries, they're still there and I'm still ovulating. So it's still releasing an egg, but I guess it's just going into my abdomen and getting absorbed versus otherwise it would go into the tube, into my uterus and then be expelled. I guess when it dies, you have a period.
Get a period anymore?
I do get a period because I'm still having cycles of the hormones because I'm still ovulating.
Gotcha. Wow.
So
very interesting.
Because the period blood and everything comes from the lining of your uterus. So that's different from the tubes themselves.
Interesting.
And it's not like your period doesn't come from your ovaries down to your, like the period's just from the uterus. We should draw a picture.
Next time we'll have a graph and everything.
Draw a picture for the podcast.
You learn something new every day. I didn't mean to derail. I'm sorry.
No.
That was really
I wanted to talk about that because that was another driving force for why I wanted to have a C-section. It was a lot of things. It was like, the horrible experience the first time, the breech, the tubes, and it was just like, I feel like this is what's right for me this time. And I'm not scared of pain. I'm not scared of surgery. Many people are, and they do say it's a longer recovery. I did not feel that way at all. I obviously limited my exercise post-operatively, like after the C-section, but I did that with the first one as well. Like you have to give your body time to heal from labor and delivery, no matter if it's natural, vaginal, or if it's a C-section.
What was your downtime? How did you feel afterwards for,
So with the C-section, I did have incisional pain. So pain right where the cut was. That was not so comfortable. I took some pain medication for a couple days. Ice helped a lot. I would keep ice on that forever. And it was so helpful to numb the pain. But I was able to walk. I was able to get up. I was able to move around just the same as I was.
No way. Were you able to hold your baby?
Yeah.
Okay.
The weird thing was because you get spinal anesthesia for a C-section. Maybe I should back up. Okay.
Yeah, back up.
So for the C-section, I went to the hospital on New Year's Eve. That's the day we scheduled it. And I showed up. They took me to a room. They got my AV started. And then I went into the operating room. They put spinal anesthesia. So similar to an epidural, they put a needle in your back. And then I went numb from that point down. And I laid on a table. My doctor and his partner came in, opened me up, took the baby out, showed it to me.
Are you awake for all this?
Totally awake. Oh,
that's messed up.
Showed me the baby. He started crying. It was so cute. And then took my tubes out, closed me up, and then I went to recovery. So there was like an hour or so where I was not with my baby while I was recovering, which is different than vaginal delivery because you get your baby right away and they don't leave you. But it was fine.
Why do they do that? Just because they have to sew you up and like...
Yeah. And I think it's for your anesthesia to wear off. And so in the meantime, they do all the things that they do to monitor your baby and warm them. And like, you know, if you opt to have the different things that they provide for you in the hospital, they do those. So like I let them put the ointment on his eyes. I knew I was going to have him circumcised. So I let them give him the vitamin K shot. You know, like there's different stuff that can happen during that time. Okay. But Nick was able to see him. So, you know, my husband could go see him with the nurses. And then when they felt that, when they felt like the anesthesia was worn off enough where I could like move and things, and they moved me and the baby into our room. And I had a catheter, which you get a catheter if you have an epidural as well. So like they had to take the catheter out and then I had to
Oh my God,
pee.
that like makes me sick to think about that. I don't know why.
It just happens and then it's over. It's really not that bad.
It doesn't hurt to go in and out?
I mean, is it comfortable? No. But like it's so fast. Okay. You know, it's like a quick little sharp pain and then you're done. Okay. And then it's in. Once it's in, it just feels like you're peeing.
What about the needle for the epidural or the spinal thing?
That never
painful?
bothered me.
Okay,
it never bothered me at all. Like they're really good with that and it's like, I don't know. Probably a perfectly sized needle to where you don't really feel it that much in that area.
I also think it is so wild that you're awake through your C-section. Is that so you can be alert if something were to go wrong?
Well, it's because the way the anesthesia, like they give you spinal anesthesia. So the anesthesia that they give is not going to the baby. So like it's just in you. Oh, so it's not systemic. Gotcha. It's not like in your IV where if it were in your IV, then it would go to the baby and the baby would be anesthetized. So yeah, it's different. And so then you're awake. But it's fine. You're chill. Like you got somebody up by your head, a CRNA or an anesthesiologist, and they're talking to you and comforting you and like telling you what's happening. And, you know, at a certain point they put the drapes down so I can see my doctor. Okay. I have this gnarly picture of my doctor holding my baby and my stomach like open. And like as a surgeon,
insane.
I love it.
Is it like framed above your fireplace?
I sent it to all my friends. I was like, look at me cut open.
It. Will you send it to me too?
I'll show it to you. Okay, cool. It's so good.
Epic.
So that was awesome. I loved that. And I have such appreciation for that side of delivery and labor. And like, you know, a lot of women are kind of discounted for having a C-section, but like sometimes that's not your choice, but B, it's still having a baby. You're still going through trauma and like having this life brought into the world.
Who would discount someone?
No, a lot of people
because they don't think you're putting in the work like everybody else?
Yeah, literally. Yeah. Man. It's insane. Yeah.
Those are the same people that comment mean things on Instagram.
Yeah. Like they don't like my eyeshadow. Yeah. Whatever. What I was talking about with the catheter, afterwards, I had a little bit of trouble peeing with Camden, but it resolved within like an hour or so. Okay. It was just like stressful to me because I was like, I don't want the catheter put back in, you know, like they take it out and then if you can't pee, they might have to put it back in. And so I was like stressing, but eventually I did.
Wow. So you had two very different birthing experiences.
Totally different. And like, I mean, let's be honest, I loved having the C-section. Like it was so controlled. Like I knew what was happening. I knew that everything was safe. And actually when they pulled Camden out, the cord was wrapped around his neck as well.
Wow. So it's like cord babies.
I don't know.
The deal?
I wanted to look it up before we had this talk. It must be common. Like
it is.
It must like just not be that big of a deal, but like, it's kind of a big deal.
It's a big deal. I think if you're not in the hospital, cause it probably will strangle the baby.
Literally.
When it's coming out.
Yeah. Like, and some babies come out blue because of that.
Oh my gosh. That was so
But
scary.
like, luckily he like pulled both of them out. It's the same doctor both times. Dr. Samuel Falzone, amazing. 17 stars review. Like he's so good.
To remember him.
Wellington Regional Medical Center. And so, both times he just like saw the cord, ripped it off, and then we went about our day. Like both kids were fine. And they suction all the things and, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. those are my birth stories.
Wow. Okay. So with a C-section, once you go that route, are you unable to go do a vaginal birth if you have like another child? Do you have to stick with that?
That will depend on your doctor.
Okay.
That's called a VBAC.
So that's something that I've heard. It's like a rumor that you have to go that way forever once you do it.
Yeah. And see, that's also why I didn't care that much, because I was like, I'm not going to have another baby. Yeah. I'm not going to have another baby, so I don't care. But that's called a VBAC. So vaginal birth after cesarean is where people who have had a C-section will try to have a vaginal birth, like go into real labor. The risk of that is because your uterus now has a scar on it from being cut open for a C-section. When you're contracting and going into labor in a natural birth, vaginal birth, your uterus could just like rupture. And like the baby, you know, like that could be a huge problem. So not a lot of doctors do that. I don't know the risk of that. I don't know how frequently that potential complication can happen. Like that's a conversation to have with your doctor.
Sure, yeah.
If you're thinking about doing that. But I know that some doctors will do it, a VBAC. Some people won't. Some hospitals will do VBAC. Some hospitals won't. So like, it's definitely something to consider. You know, like if you have a C-section, like I think you need to think long and hard and like, you know, weigh the risk, benefits, pros, cons, and really know your data before you decide to try to have a vaginal delivery after a C-section. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I have no opinion about it.
Did you have your makeup done for both procedures?
100%.
Oh, I think I'm going to do the same thing.
Yeah. And like with Charlie, another problem, I had to touch it up because it was so long.
It took so damn long. It took
24 hours. Like I have a picture of Kylie, my sister, helping me touch up my makeup with Charlie as I was bouncing on a ball.
When you gave birth to Cam, that wasn't during the time where COVID restrictions were still in the hospitals.
Thank God. And that was like another, probably subconsciously, that was another reason why we waited to have the second baby. Cause it was like none of that stuff. Like I didn't have to wear a mask into the hospital. I didn't have to do any of that stupid.
Were you allowed
I'm not going to say stupid, but I didn't have to do any of those things.
Did you have to, or did you have a limit on how many people you could have in the room with you?
I think there was, but it was very lenient. You know, like at one point, it was one person in, one person out. Like, or at even one point, you couldn't have any visitors.
Oh, I know. During COVID. Horrible. I can't even imagine being a mother giving birth during that time.
Me either. Like, honestly, women who had babies during that time, like, you deserve a medal. You deserve free therapy for the rest of your life, because that in itself, like, I saw pictures of women, like, pushing with a mask on. Like, that's not normal.
How did you breathe?
You can't. Yeah, you can't. So anyways, I feel so bad for those women. But
I know, me too.
No, I didn't have really any of that. Thank God.
Who did you have with you in the room for both children?
With Charlie, Nick, obviously, and then my sister Kylie was in town. With Camden, it was just Nick because we were in an operating room. So he was able to be at the head of the bed with me.
That's where I'm going to keep Dan, is at the head. I'm not letting him see what's going on.
Nick looked when I delivered Charlie, and he was like, that was crazy.
What you said with Charlie, he saw it? Oh, wow.
Yeah, he looked down there. I didn't. I don't even know. I don't care to know. I've seen it on other humans.
I'm so scared of that.
So yeah, no, it was my hospital experience both times was really good, but I will throw in the little side note that I was on staff at the hospital when I delivered Charlie. I wasn't technically on staff at the hospital when I delivered Camden, but a lot of people still knew who I was.
That's so great.
Yeah,
I'm sure that made your experience so much more wonderful. Everyone knew you.
Not everyone, but they did know of me, or at least, you know, like they knew
you were
that
notorious in those hallways, in the streets.
Notorious. So yeah, those are my birth stories. I wanted to share them because they were both so different, you know, like totally different experiences. I feel like it's very rare for people to say they had an enjoyable C-section, but like mine was great. I did not feel limited by my recovery, but I also was very in shape for both pregnancies. Like I was working out like up until delivery, and, you know, I did not gain a lot of weight either, which I think is key. I gained like less than 30 pounds with both kids.
I'm sure being healthy and fit will help you have a
speedier recovery.
Yeah, a speedier recovery, but also maybe like a good delivery. I think that would help you if you're healthy and in shape. That's gotta be a plus.
You would think, but I don't know. I kind of almost felt like with the vaginal delivery that it hurt me because I felt like I was like so tense. And it's like, if I would have just like been able to relax, and I don't know if that has anything to do with my physical fitness level, but you also see people who are completely out of shape and overweight and unhealthy have amazing deliveries. Yeah. So
it's always just an
individual
experience.
It's an individual experience.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe you had 2 babies. I can't wait to catch up with you.
I know.
And this was a podcast that I really wanted to, you know, be a part of and hear, because these are the questions that I have, and this is something that I'm going to experience hopefully soon. So
I know. It's exciting, but I survived. Those are my stories.
Strong. You are a mother. You are amazing.
Right.
I'm trying to think. While I have you here, I got to ask all the, the hard hitting questions.
I know. Is there anything we're leaving on the table?
I'm sure there is.
Recovery, I think, is like a whole nother topic.
Okay.
It's a whole nother topic because it's a lot, but for the most part, like if you go to like Pinterest, for example, and you put like hospital bag, you're going to get really good recommendations for what to bring to the hospital. I don't think they recommend stupid things like, you want to bring some slippers, you want to bring a bathrobe, like basic stuff. But the hospital will give you a lot. Like they'll give you these like basically maxi pads that are iced that you can put down there after.
Fancy.
And when I had the C-section, I put those across my tummy, like where the C-section scar was. And that helped.
I would just like rock a diaper. I feel like that would be helpful.
It depends for either, because even though you don't have a vaginal delivery, you still have bleeding after a C-section.
For how long?
I think it's less.
Is it weeks?
It's ish. I think it's like between 1 and 2 weeks.
Okay.
I can't quite remember. I have a horrible memory.
Well, everybody's different too, but
and everybody's
rough
different.
ballpark. So like weeks. It's not days or hours.
It's not days. It's not hours, but it's not like a month.
What about when can you have sex again after having a baby? Roughly,
I would say. I mean, I think your doctors say 6 weeks.
So how severely you tore? Were you able to after 6 weeks?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, listen, you're not like in the mood very early afterwards.
I can't imagine that you would be. I don't think I would either.
But
don't touch me.
You actually heal really quickly down there.
Yeah, I guess that's what your body's meant to do.
It's like, when you bite your tongue and then it's like bleeding, but then like a couple hours later it's healed.
Well, the tongue is actually the fastest healing thing in our body, isn't it?
I think the vagina might be second fastest.
Ooh, shit. Okay. Power of the pussy.
Exactly. Okay, we'll leave it at that because we're getting close to an hour.
Okay.
But
I do have one last question for you.
Go for
what
it.
was your first post-birth meal? Was it sushi that you were craving? Was it like a lunch meat, maybe a delicatessen sandwich because you can't eat it?
I don't even remember, but I think for Charlie, it was a margarita. And then
you better have one in the room for you when you were done.
No, I don't remember when, but it was I definitely was craving margaritas with Charlie. And then Camden, because we delivered on New Year's Eve.
Oh, what a party. Do you have some champagne?
We brought a bottle of champagne and we brought our, we have wine glasses or champagne flutes that we got at our wedding that were engraved. So we brought those pretty ones to the hospital. I have a picture of us cheersing with a baby behind us.
Oh, that's so special.
I had like one sip because like you have no interest in alcohol.
Oh, I'm sure it's like disgusting
for like months. Yeah.
Aww.
But for the moment.
Well, his birthday's coming up. And I think that mothers should be celebrated on their children's birthdays. Cause you know what? Like you're the one that did all the work. You brought this baby. Your vagina was tore for this child. Yeah. Birthdays should be celebrated for the moms as well.
100%.
And I am going to die on this hill.
Next time, bring a gift for the mom to the birthday party.
Well, Kandace, thank you so much. This was so helpful, so informational. You are a queen, and I am so in awe of you.
I can't wait for you to have a baby.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you for literally everything. So thank you. And I will refer back to this podcast whenever I am pregnant and having a baby.
Okay, everyone, please leave me a review.
5 stars only.
5 stars only. DM me. Make sure you're subscribed and check back next week for another episode of the Slimming Surgeon podcast. Thank you, Daria.
Thank you, Kandace. Peace.
Bye.